There is a renewed bipartisan effort to enact a federal law shielding reporters from revealing confidential sources and documents. This comes after the Justice Department revealed it seized years of records from a New York Times reporter in an effort to track down leaks. Republican Congressman Jim Jordan is back with us now, and joining him is Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. Suffice it to say, the two of you agree probably on very little politically. Congressman Jordan, very conservative. Congressman Raskin, very liberal. I am glad that journalism can bring you together. Congressman Raskin, what are you trying to do here?
Well, Thomas Jefferson said if he had to choose between having a government without a newspaper or a newspaper without a government, he wouldn't hesitate a moment to choose the latter. And, you know, presidents come and go. We have different administrations, but we really cannot survive as a republic without a free press. And when Attorney General Sessions came to our committee, I asked him the question of whether he would commit not to prosecute reporters or jail reporters demanding that they turn over confidential sources, and he wouldn't commit to do it. So I found that there was legislation actually introduced by then Congressman Mike Pence, now Vice President, which passed overwhelmingly in the House on a vote of 398 to 21 back in 2007. And I said, let's dust that off and see if we can get it through the House side, which should be easy, and then get it through the Senate side. And I was looking for somebody who was a fighter, a brawler, who'd be willing to go into the trenches with me for the Bill of Rights. And I thought about Jim Jordan. This guy fights. And so he's going to get 3,200 kids reunited with their families later today. And then I think we're going to go and defend the First Amendment and the role of the press as the central watchdog for the American people.
This act, the Free Flow of Information Act, shields journalists from testifying, revealing sources, revealing documents, unless disclosure is necessary to prevent terror or other possible intervening issues there. Congressman Jordan, why is this important to you?
Well, for the same reasons the professor just talked about, but most importantly, what you just referenced in your opening comments. Allie Watson had all her material just grabbed. This whole situation with Allie Watson as a reporter from the New York Times and Mr. Wolf, a former staffer for the Senate Intelligence Committee, it is not supposed to work that way. That is not how the First Amendment operates. And my concern is we've seen so many encroachments on our liberties from the government. I mean, I was concerned when the IRS went after conservatives, Tea Party conservative groups out there and targeted them. I'm concerned about what I see at the FBI. And so when Jamie came to me and said, look, let's shield reporters from having their First Amendment freedom of the press rights violated, I said, I'm all in. And then we have this situation which developed just 2 weeks ago with Ms. Watson and the former Senate Intelligence Committee staffer. So this is why this is so important. We're looking to have hearings on this. We're looking to get this passed, and we're picking up co-sponsors each and every day.
Congressman Jordan, it's interesting because I know, and I've heard you talk about leaks before. You know, everyone is critical of leaks, but you are mostly critical, if I understand it correctly, of the people doing the leaking. You do not feel it's a problem for journalists to report what we learn, correct?
Of course not. The government should go wholeheartedly with everything they got after people who are leaking information, particularly if it's classified. Let's go get those and bring the full force of the government and the law on people who do that. But you cannot go after the reporter. That is as fun. Freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of practice your faith. Well, this is the First Amendment, for goodness sake. So you cannot do that. But go after the person who leaked. I'm all for that, but not the reporter.
Now, we can all support this embrace of journalism here, and I think we don't hear it quite enough. In fact, Congressman Raskin, what we often hear from the administration is an attack on the media, talking about what he calls fake news the president does, suggesting that journalism is an enemy of the people. Do you think that has muddied the waters here?
The media is not the enemy of the people. The media is the people's best friend. And the founders of the Constitution understood that. We needed to have a free press in order to be a watchdog against government corruption in violation of the rights of the people. So, you know, fake news has always been with us. There have always been lies and deceptions told. But the worst fake news is when it comes from the government, when it's propaganda. And so that means that we need a press in order to have whistleblowers so people can tell the truth. And reporters simply should not be the subject of criminal investigation and intimidation and harassment by the government. And again, this is something that passed the House with Vice President Mike Pence pushing it a decade ago. We should be able to get this through quickly in the House, and then let's hope that our friends in the Senate do the right thing.
You know, journalists make mistakes. We all know that. I think that It's
No,
fair game.
come on, John.
It's fair game to criticize the story, Congressman Jordan, but when you call journalists the enemy of the people, which the president has, does that go too far?
Look, John, this is about the First Amendment, plain and simple. This is about protecting everyone's First Amendment liberties. And as I said before, every single one of those, freedom to practice your faith the way you want, freedom to speak out the way you want. So the president has a right to speak out. You got a right as a journalist to cover that and cover it in the way you think is most appropriate for the American people. That's how the system works. Let's protect that. That's what our bill seeks to do, so that you can have your sources. You don't have to reveal your sources. You can get the information you need that you think the American people should hear.
Congressman Raskin, it's interesting because the Wall Street Journal is reporting overnight that the Justice Department, in one of the investigations into Michael Cohen, has subpoenaed the National Enquirer to find out information about its relationship with Karen McDougal. The Enquirer paid Karen McDougal money to keep her story quiet about her alleged relationship with the president. So it's interesting because you get into these murky areas here. Do you feel that the National Enquirer, Congressman Raskin, needs to reveal the source of the funding, whether Michael Cohen was involved in paying them or involved in the decision making? How do you feel about that?
Well, what's murky there is the question of whether or not the newspaper is being investigated for its sources as to another story, or whether it's being investigated because it itself is potentially a suspect in a crime. Obviously, just because you set up a newspaper doesn't mean that you've got the right to commit murder or espionage or any other manner of crime. So if a newspaper commits a crime, of course you can investigate the people who are involved in it. But what we're talking about here is reporters who get sources and are able to write a story, and then the government wants to come and force them to divulge what their confidential sources are. And we're saying that's not acceptable unless there's some matter of extreme national security or terrorism, or there's imminent death being threatened, because that is what the role of the press is. And it is in the Constitution, as Jim says. It's in the First Amendment. The press is identified itself explicitly as something that we're protecting.
Congressman Raskin, Congressman Jordan, I say this without an ounce of cynicism. Thank you for this. Thank you for standing up for journalists. Thank you for sitting together and having a civil conversation on this. I hope it can happen on many different issues going forward. I really do appreciate it.
Well, and now we're going to go save those kids who can't find their parents.
Well, Congressman Jordan, after you do call the administration to get answers, call us back and let us know what they say on that.
We'll do that.
2,300 kids still